with 2006 being a midterm election, this is particularly why I thought this could be an interesting comparison. With 2006 being a midterm election and 2008 being the election that it was both for young voters and the country overall, it would seem that perhaps the overall levels of the comfort level with engaging in interpersonal discussion about politics might be a little lower in a midterm. We know that we tend to have less information, report less information availability or access to information in midterm elections. We know that there's a lower level of reporting of knowledge during midterm elections, and we certainly know that our folks vote in much lower percentages during midterm elections. So what I found, and perhaps not surprisingly, is that on the factor of cognitive engagement, yes, there is a significant increase between the 2006 midterms and the 2008 general election. There is also a significant increase on perceived knowledge between the 2006 midterms as compared to the 2008 general election. Of interest, though, and I was surprised at this because this data set does focus on young voters, as does Dr. McKinney and Dr. Bystrom's data sets, there was no difference, and I mean literally no difference, on perceived relevance in the 2006 midterm and the 2008. In fact, they were the identical mean score. And I double-checked my data on that too, just to make sure. My second research question inquired whether young men and women differed in their perceptions of their competence to talk politics in 2006 and 2008. So I split the data file by gender and asked it to compare just male voters, 2006 and 08, and just female voters, 06 and 08. And what I found is that there was no difference for male young voters at all. In fact, there was no significant difference, a slight increase on their cognitive engagement between 06 and 08, a decrease actually on their perceived relevance between 06 and 08, and a very, very minimal increase on their perceived knowledge, but overall no statistical significance. However, with female voters, there was an increase, significant increase, in their cognitive engagement between 06 and 08 and their reported perceived knowledge between 06 and 08. They did have a slight increase on perceived relevance, but it wasn't at a level of significance. Drawing from the notion of the role model theory, which argues that when you have a viable female candidate running for office and it's widely reported via the media, that in fact young women seem to be more engaged, they report higher levels of interest, they report higher levels of perceived political engagement after the election, and they also will report higher levels of knowledge. Kelly Winfrey and I have done some work on the 08 election with regard to the primaries where Hillary Clinton was a factor, and we actually found, surprisingly, that in the 08 primaries, the role model theory didn't seem to bear itself out. So we were interested in whether or not in the general election there might be a difference, and there might be a difference on those races where we tend to see women as much more active and much more successful in politics. So we put together a specific experimental study where we exposed the young voters to advertisements from a female-male race, from a male-male race, and from a female-female race. And what we found with regard to their interpersonal competence is that overall there's not a significant difference. But when you look at it at a much more detailed level, factor-wise, women were more cognitively engaged after viewing the male-male race, followed by the female-female race, and then followed by the female-male race. Significantly, there was higher levels of perceived relevance after viewing the female-female race, but not the male-male and not the female-male. And there were higher levels of perceived knowledge after viewing the male-female race, but not at a level of significance. So